I'm Karen Stone, and I founded Mindshift Performance about 18 months ago. And what I do is I work with leaders, teams, and organizations to help them facilitate change. And I do that using neuroscience-backed tools, behavioral psychology, and also my experience as a practitioner as global head of talents in the past. I've known James for over 10 years now. So I already knew him before he founded TalentPredix. So I was very keen to understand the TalentPredix methodology. So basically, I think from the get-go, I was certainly speaking to James and understanding what differentiated the TalentPredix assessment tools and the approach and philosophy behind it. And I absolutely get it. It aligns so well with the work that I do. So it's definitely an enabler of a lot of the things that I'm working on with my clients. So I'm a huge advocate and user. So some of the talents I think that really set me up well for my role today as a consultant. So I have curiosity as one of my strengths. And I think how that plays out is I'm always keen to listen to understand and to be able to ask those powerful questions. I think boldness, which is another one of mine, also helps me ask the challenging questions that maybe is more difficult sometimes to ask when you're inside an organization than it is from the outside. So you have the other perspective, but also you're prepared to call something out, ask a question that maybe other people might find difficult to do. So that's definitely, those two have served me well. And maybe the third talent of mine that has definitely set me up in my whole life, I think, is this thirst for self-development. And what that has meant is not only has that been about developing myself and my own capabilities, but it's also about how I learn the relevant insights, latest research, and make those insights practical for the work that I'm doing with my clients. And I guess there's a self-development with, okay, how do we make that practical? How is that relevant? So I'm less interested in, I don't know, spouting knowledge, but more about, oh, how does that, I'm a good connector, so I can connect my maybe new things that I'm learning about with existing experiences or contexts and bring them to life for those people that I'm working with. Well, I think I'll answer that for myself personally. And one of my risk areas is this in excess talent, where if I take curiosity as an example, I'm scared to count up how many books I have. I have about 5 book cases. Um, and I think it's easy for me to see a topic that's of interest and say, I want to read that, I want to buy that, and I want to learn about that. But I have to become very disciplined about what I allow myself. Firstly, obviously, to buy books that then you're not reading makes me sad. So I have to sort of have a little strategy there to ask myself the question, you know, do I want this and do I want this now? Sometimes I'll put it in my saved to come back to, but not let it arrive because I know that I'll want to read that and it will distract me from what I'm working on right now. So I think that self-development in excess and maybe some of that curiosity. Also, you know, if a new piece of research comes in, I can become distracted by that and it will take me off my priorities. So again, I have to recognize that, new thing I'm interested in versus do what you're focused on, what you need to prioritize right now. So that's for me personally. What I'd say when I'm working with clients, it is most commonly one of the great aha moments that I love to enable and to be part of when people see that rather than what we might typically believe is, oh, this is a gap or a weakness, they see those limiters being something that in most cases serves them really well. And yet there are times or contexts or circumstances when maybe it can trip them up. And I have always found that to be a much more positive way of affecting change with people, because I think they're sort of, mitigating risk over filling a gap. Which one is more motivating to take action around? And I think it's the former over the latter. And so I think the overused talents is most commonly where I see aha moments, and it becomes very actionable and people are motivated to take the action around it. I also believe that it is one of the most helpful ways of asking for feedback or support, so that you can position with a peer or a manager or even your team to share that tendency and to ask people to hold you to account or to draw attention to it or to provide some advice or insight. So as a strategy for feedback or even feed forward, so what's the advice you'd given me knowing that I have this tendency? I found that to be really, really helpful for the people that I'm working with one-to-one. So I'm typically working with teams or organizations or cultures that are experiencing or needing transformation. And that's true of most organizations today. I think the world is moving so fast. Organizations are having to pivot very, very quickly. And so this notion of agility to be able to shift mindsets as well as behaviors and habits is critical. So that's typically the area or the context that I'm working with my clients on. And what I have found is the TalentPredix insights is a fantastic, what I would call accelerator of transformation, because it's the first step in my view of change, is knowing where we are. And that insight, whether that's as an individual leader in this team or as we're looking at it through the team lens, is okay, this is where we are as a team. And with this team profile, these are our tendencies. And so when we then overlay those tendencies with maybe our strategic priorities, we can see where there might be alignment, where there might be dissonance, and where we really need to be much more intentional in our behaviors. So I think it gives people a reset of a compass a little bit, because they might realize, actually, this is an area that we probably don't naturally lean into. And so we've got to hold each other accountable for doing this. Some of the other things we'll do naturally based on the fact that they're our talents, but this particular area is something that both we're going to have to be intentional about, and also we might ask others to help support us, mentor us in that particular area. So I do see it as a great accelerator and a great, like, this is where we are, this is who we are, and this is where we are today, and then how do we want to develop and grow from that point? Great question. So the model that I use sort of in the background, not necessarily in the foreground of change, starts with what we call intelligent self-watching. And of course, the TalentPredix tool very clearly sits in that first step. So when I become intentional about how am I doing, and I'm starting to put some data points around that rather than just, yes, good, not so good, not sure, I'm starting to put a measurement. It's a self measurement. And then I've got a starting point from which I can then create an aim about, directionally, what do I want to do knowing that? So if I don't know, how am I doing today as a leader? Really broad question. Let's say on a 10-point scale, how would I rate myself if I look back on the last week or month? If I add in the strength that enable me as a leader, the risk areas that might be risk factors for me, it's another element which gives a much more holistic. So rather than it being now a measurement, this is an understanding and appreciation of who I am and how that drives my behavior. So then when I'm looking for to drive some action, I can start to build habits around that. And I'll give you an example. I was coaching somebody yesterday, and it was our first meeting, in fact. And we were using the TalentPredix tool, which is very commonly what I do. So the first coaching session with me is often um, debriefing on those insights. And I could see all sorts of aha moments shining a light for her. And it validated, I guess, those half thoughts, those shady, not thought through, but sort of impressions or wonderings into some very sharp insights that made complete sense for her, and also very, very clearly, almost without needing my guide, helped her identify some priority areas to focus on, both in terms of things that were challenging her and the team, but also how she wanted to develop and grow as a leader. So I think that what I've already mentioned in terms of looking at the in excess tendencies, I have known personally, when I first appreciated that, it was a huge epiphany moment for me. So I know how important that is as a catalyst for change. So that definitely stands out. The actionable insights, both in terms of understanding that a talent isn't fully optimized, or doesn't become a strength until it's fully optimized. So what are the practical steps that I can take to really bring that talent to its fullest potential? And then I guess the third element for me is the holistic lens, where we start to look at values and career drivers as well. So having that better appreciation for, maybe as I look back on my career, that might have helped me see why I've taken certain decisions and pathways in the past, but also was a really helpful step forward as I think about, so what might the next step be? Taking those into account. What are the things that are really important for me? How it can help me as I, genuinely compare maybe one opportunity with another. That might be an internal opportunity, but it could also be an external opportunity, because I know that if it's aligned with my values and my aspirations for my career, I'm much more likely not only to feel satisfied and engaged, but also to help produce my best work. So as a tool to help me develop self-mastery, I think it's a fantastic tool, and I don't know a better one. So I was working with a team, an intact team recently, and we were spending time looking at their individual strengths first, and talking, they were talking about that and sharing those insights with some of their colleagues, where I could see there was so much energy and positivity in the room as they did that. And also, I guess, because they were a completely out of office team, they didn't have an office, and therefore coming together at these times was critical and important for building the relationships and collaborating more effectively. And this was a great tool to help them do that. But when we then moved into looking at that through the team lens, as we looked at the team report, it really was help them build that as a foundation for then looking at the value that they wanted to deliver as a team, as an organization, in fact, and as they were looking strategically to scale their organization in the future, and how they can best support their clients with what they do. So I think it was defining their unique value as they looked at that team profile, understanding again, as I said before, where they might want to mitigate or get support in the areas that maybe they wouldn't have the tendency to do, that might be necessary as they look at their strategic priorities, and then the change that they wanted to drive together. So what I really saw was a group of people who came together on their cause. I mean, it was clear, it wasn't clear to them what the heart of what they were doing, and what the organization had been built to do. But I think it was a very strong add to that, I guess, that the mission driven nature of their organization. And so I think it was like a bit of rocket fuel that helped them then, move forward on their journey. And, those are the things that, as a consultant, they're a bit of a gift, I feel. You feel very privileged to be able to see that happening in front of you. But probably, again, what's more important, if I take that example of that team, is the number of people that have reached out to me subsequently, asking me questions and wanting to drive it and move it forward, lets me know that it landed really powerfully. And I feel very happy when I see and hear that.